I ultimately made my pastor pay a stunning price for his hypocrisy. I got him fired, divorced, and left to face criminal charges. And it all started with a simple, seemingly insignificant $60 check he refused to honor. I've been a computer technician for over 15 years. Working on everything from tiny point-of-sale machines to massive rack servers. About 5 years ago, I started attending a new church. I was trying to date a woman there, Chloe. And going to her church was part of the deal. That relationship, as you'll soon see, crashed and burned spectacularly. But that's a story for another time. One Sunday, I sat through a long sermon all about generosity and giving to those in need. At the end, the pastor, a man we'll call Pastor Dean, announced that the church roof needed urgent repairs and asked for an additional donation. The cost, he claimed, was a staggering $20,000. After the service, as I was chatting with Chloe, Pastor Dean walked over. He asked what I did for a living. And I told him I was a computer tech with my own shop. I got the distinct feeling he already knew. He immediately asked if I could look at his laptop, which he said was running very slow. I agreed to take a look. The moment I turned it on, I heard a faint but distinct clicking noise, the telltale death rattle of a failing hard drive. The good news was that I could still access the data, which meant recovery was very likely. I explained to Pastor Dean that the hard drive was dying and had to be replaced. He asked what the damage would be for a typical customer. I told him a job like this with data recovery would be around $250. However, I continued, feeling generous after his sermon, I'm happy to donate my labor. You'll just need to cover the part, which is $60 for a new hard drive. He readily agreed. And I wrote up an invoice, new hard drive $60. Labor $0. Data recovery $0. He signed it. And I took the laptop back to my shop. Back at the shop, I began the repair. I first had to clone his dying drive to one of my high-end storage drives to safely extract the data. The process was slow. After a full day, it was still churning away. By Tuesday morning, the recovery was finally complete, 100% of the data was saved. The drive's failure was due to too many bad sectors. Just as I suspected. Now I had a choice. For the agreed $60, I could install a standard 1 TB hard drive or a much faster, but smaller, 120 GB solid-state drive (SSD). Feeling generous, I decided to go a step further and paid out of my own pocket for a better 240 GB SSD, which cost me $100. I installed the new SSD and cloned all his data onto it. The laptop was now exactly as he remembered it, down to the saved logins, but significantly faster. I called Pastor Dean to let him know it was ready. He came by about 45 minutes later, was thrilled with the speed, signed the pickup form, and paid me with a check for $60. It's important that he paid by check. My shop does bank runs on Mondays and Fridays. That Friday, the bank teller informed me the check was void. Pastor Dean had placed a stop payment on it. He'd cheated me. I called him, but my call went straight to voicemail. At church that Sunday, he delivered a sermon about the importance of not lying, then actively avoided me after the service. I decided to just write it off. I was out $100 and some time. But it wasn't worth the fight. A few weeks later, a customer, Mark, came in looking for a new computer. He mentioned he was a contractor, specializing in siding and roofing. Curious, I asked him how much a new roof for a building like our church would typically cost. He estimated around $10. 000. Maybe as low as $5. 000 for a simple job. And he could probably do it for less. When I asked why someone might quote $20. 000. He had no idea. The pastor's number was double a high-end estimate. Something about that conversation bothered me. Why would Pastor Dean lie about the roof? And why would he stiff me for a measly $60? It was then that a thought struck me. I had never cleared the recovery rig. I checked my shop storage drive. And there it was, a perfect clone of Pastor Dean's entire laptop. Business was slow. So I started looking. This revealed Pastor Dean's greatest fatal flaw, not just his hypocrisy, but his staggering carelessness. He built a fortress of lies but left the front gate wide open, with the keys hanging right on the door. In a folder right on his desktop, he had all of his saved logins, including his credentials for online poker and several online dating sites. Did I mention Pastor Dean was married? My anger began to build as I found messages detailing his affairs with several women. I realized he was paying for his hotel rooms and dates directly from the church's donation fund. Then came the final blow. I found messages confirming he had been sleeping with Chloe, the woman I was dating, during the time we were together. It was in that moment I decided to break Pastor Dean. Some people online might call this a Paladin moment, where you stop being a victim and start smiting evildoers. That's exactly how it felt. I meticulously printed out 6 months of his dating messages, detailing his affairs. I refused to print the naughty pictures, but the text was damning enough. The final packet was impressive. I then ordered 100 copies from an online printer, professionally made with double-sided printing and a staple binding, complete with Pastor Dean's smiling face on the cover. The church published a calendar of upcoming sermon topics. A perfect Sunday was approaching. The sermon of the day was to be on the evils of adultery and cheating. On that perfect Sunday, as the pastor preached against the very sins he embodied, a different kind of sermon was being delivered in the parking lot, one of truth, consequence, and absolute ruin. I arrived late, ensuring everyone was inside for the service, and placed one of my revenge packets on the windshield of every single car. I had a few special packets in yellow envelopes. These went in the mail, addressed to all the higher-ups in the church organization. And one very special packet, which included some of the more compromising photos, was sent directly to Pastor Dean's wife, Eleanor. I set the return address as the church itself, for good measure. I also emailed a digital version to a list of church members from a burner account. A couple of weeks later, I returned to the church. Pastor Dean was gone. His wife, Eleanor, was also gone. Several other women from the congregation hadn't returned either, including Chloe. I asked one of the deacons what had happened. He told me about the packets that had mysteriously appeared on everyone's cars, exposing the pastor's secrets on the exact day he was giving a sermon against adultery. The fallout was total. Pastor Dean was immediately fired and shunned. His wife, Eleanor, who owned their house and cars, was divorcing him. He was being sued by multiple people, including the contractor who actually fixed the roof and was never paid. Rumors of a criminal case for embezzlement began to circulate. Apparently, on top of everything else, he had also spent over $30,000 of the church's money on online gambling. No one has seen him in a while. The church itself is now struggling. Its funds depleted and its reputation shattered. And to this day, absolutely no one knows I was the one who brought his world crashing down. This story is a stark reminder that a foundation built on lies, theft, and hypocrisy cannot stand. The very secrets Pastor Dean tried to hide became the instruments of his public ruin. My actions were certainly controversial, and I technically broke the law to expose him. But were they morally justified? What would you have done if you were in my shoes?